Welcome back. I hope you had a great week. This week in Level F, we're going to be covering lessons 29 through 32. And you'll need your worksheets, numbers 18 through 21, A or B, the Casio calculator, the basic number card deck, tally sticks, 4 sets of multiplication cards and their corresponding envelopes, the math card games book. All right, let's get started. In lesson 29, we will be working on more averaging. The warm-up questions are both oral and written this time. The written ones are found on worksheet 18. So go ahead and check those answers first before moving on to the first problem on the worksheet. Notice how during that first problem, we're also looking at how to properly use a calculator. Use the memory function to add in duplicate numbers, okay? In problem number 2, the child will learn how one low score can actually really affect the final grade, and how that even if you got 100% on everything else, that one low score means that your final grade could never be 100%. All right, notice how in problem 3, there will be some conversion of fractions to decimals and minutes to hours or hours to minutes. Those will be, just a little bit more challenging. The in conclusion questions are a challenging application of what was learned today. You can finish up by playing lowest in the corners, which is a really fun game. It's P18 in the math card games book, but we also have a video on our website, so I'll go ahead and link that in the description. Notice that there are a few mistakes made during that video, but they are discussed in the blog that corresponds with it and in the comments below. So you might want to look at those before you watch the video so that you don't get misled. So in lesson 30, we will be rounding whole numbers and decimals. The warm-ups are on worksheet 19, but before moving on to the first problem, let's go ahead and review rounding. I like how rounding is presented and demonstrated on the number line in this lesson for both whole numbers and decimals, so let's take a look at that.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at a number line. So the problem says to round 28 to the nearest 10. So then you ask, what is the nearest 10? Okay, so the nearest 10s are 20 and 30. And here we have 25 in the center. So the number that we're dealing with is 28. And so then you just ask, so first you ask, what are the 2 possible 10s? That's how you know what to write on the number line. And then you say, is 28 closer to 20 or to 30? And of course, 28 would be somewhere around here, right? So 28 is closer to 30, so we would round up to 30. Okay? Now let's look at how that works with decimals. All right, so here on our number line, the target number that we're working with is 3.23. We want to round to the nearest 10th. So the 2 possibilities are 3.2 or 3.3. And the number in the middle would be 3.25. So is 3.23 closer to 3.2 or to 3.3? Well, it definitely falls on this side of 3.25, so it would be closer to 3.2. So we're going to round down to 3.2. So now some kids might object to the fact that there's actually 3 digits here, and over here we only have 2. So they can annex a 0 at the end of these if that helps them to compare the numbers, because sometimes that throws them off if we don't have that 0 there. So if they need that, it's okay to go ahead and annex a 0 after those numbers.
So notice in problem 3 on the chart, if the child is asked to round to the nearest hundredths, but there is no thousandths to compare to, then the number stays the same. So that might be something you need to point out to your student. After completing the worksheet, you can play near 30, which is very much like make 30, but notice that there are some rule changes. And everybody has to play all 4 cards. The goal is to get as close to 30 as possible. The in conclusion questions summarizes today's lesson. All right, for lesson 31, we'll be converting fractions to decimals, practicing rounding, and comparing decimals. So after the warm-ups, which are on worksheet 20, we will look at converting fractions to decimals on the calculator and then rounding them. So it's very simple. We just look at the fraction, say it's 4/7, and we type into the calculator 4 divided by 7. We end up with a decimal. Then we're going to round that decimal to either the hundredths or the tenths, whichever the exercise calls for. All right, the examples and the worksheet are fairly self-explanatory, so I don't think you'll have any problems with them. After completing them, ask the in conclusion questions and then play near 30 once again. This time, though, the numbers don't have to be whole numbers. We could count those numbers as decimals. So why would you want to use that? Well, maybe you had 4 cards and 3 of those cards actually equaled 30, right? So you would have won if you only had to play 30 cards. But let's say that the next number is a 2, so that would make it 32. Well, you could claim that as 0.2, so it could be 30.2. So that might get you the nearest to 30. All right. Let's see, so for lesson 32, we have a review and a game. Okay, so after the oral questions, remember, your student should be writing down just the answer, not the equation that you said orally. So after the oral questions, have your student complete the review sheet and then check the answers before moving on to the game. Now remember that you can use this review sheet any way you want. So if you just want to treat it as another worksheet, fine, you did. If you want to use it as a pre-test and use the second version, 21B, as a test, you can definitely do that. You can use the first one as a quiz and say your student does great on it. Then there's your quiz grade. Maybe your student had some issues with it. Well, that's good. Now you know where some holes are. So you could go back, play games, cover those topics again, and then use the second version of the quiz or the review as the final quiz. Okay, so it's up to you. You can use it any way you want. Let's see. So after that, you can play near 30 again, or any game of your choice. And that's it for this week. Next week, we will cover lessons 33 through 36, and I hope to see you then. Thanks. Bye-bye.